The November wind cut through Detective Liam Cole's wool coat like it was made of tissue paper. He stood at the edge of Riverside Park in Grand Rapids, watching crime scene techs dust the mouth of a yellow tube slide for prints that they wouldn't find. Not a single useful one in 6 weeks, not since Tommy Davis vanished into thin air, followed by Sophia Martinez, then the Williams twins. The playground equipment looked innocent enough in the harsh morning light, primary colors trying too hard to be cheerful against the dead grass and bare trees. Cole took a long drag from his cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign that creaked on its rusted post nearby. 15 years on homicide, and he'd never seen anything like this. "Detective," Officer Jenny Mills approached, clutching her tablet. "Parent's statement is ready." Cole nodded, dropping the cigarette and crushing it under his heel. Same story as the others. Kid goes down the slide, never comes out of the bottom. Security cameras show them entering, but nothing else. No bodies, no evidence, no leads. Just empty slides and screaming parents. He'd seen enough dead kids in his career. Too many. Each one carved another piece out of whatever soul he had left after Sophia. After what happened at the academy. Cole's apartment was a shrine to failure. Empty whiskey bottles lined the windowsill like silent sentinels gathering dust. Photos of Sophia, his Sophia, not the missing girl, still hung crooked on the walls. 8 years since the academy shooting, since he'd failed to spot the signs, failed to stop his partner before she snapped and took out half their class, including the only woman he'd ever loved. He stripped off his tie, letting it fall among the case files scattering across his coffee table. 4 missing kids, 4 families, looking to him for answers. The department psychiatrist said he was too close to this one, that he was projecting his guilt about Sophia onto these disappearances. Maybe she was right. The burner phone on his nightstand buzzed. Maya. She always knew when he was at his lowest. "Oh, hey, sugar." Her voice purred through the speaker. "You had a bad day?" 2 hours later, Cole lay tangled in cheap motel sheets, watching Maya apply fresh lipstick in the bathroom mirror. Her real name was Angela, but he never used it. They both preferred the fantasy. "You thinking about those missing kids again?" she said, catching his reflection in the mirror. "Can't stop." She turned, leaning against the doorframe. The neon from the motel sign painted her curves in harsh red light. "Maybe you should, before it breaks you." But he was already broken, had been since Sophia. These disappearances were just another crack in the glass. Dawn found Cole back at Riverside Park, alone this time. No crime scene tape, no grieving parents, just him and the playground equipment casting long shadows in the early light. He stood before the yellow tube slide, the one that had swallowed Tommy Davis whole. Police had searched it a dozen times, sent cameras through it, even had canine units sniff every inch. Nothing. "This is so fucking stupid," he muttered, crouching at the entrance. He barely fit. At 6'2", he was a far cry from the slide's intended users. But 4 kids had vanished into this twisted piece of plastic, and he was fresh out of rational explanations. The bourbon from last night still burned in his gut as he forced himself into the tube. "If anyone sees this, I'll never live this down." His voice echoed strangely in the confined space. He started to slide. The first few feet were exactly what you'd expect. Smooth plastic, gentle curve, dim light filtering through the yellow walls. Then everything changed. The tube seemed to stretch, the walls becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone entirely. Cole felt his stomach lurch as gravity shifted. He was falling, spinning through a void that shouldn't exist, tumbling through spaces his mind couldn't process. His last coherent thought before the darkness took him was of Sophia. Not the missing girl, but his Sophia, and how she would have laughed to see him disappear down a playground slide at 43 years old. Then the void swallowed him whole, just like it had swallowed 4 innocent kids before him. And this was only the beginning. Cole hit concrete hard. The impact knocked his gun from his holster, sending it skittering into darkness. He lay there, tasting copper in his mouth, trying to orient himself in a space that shouldn't exist. The room, if you could call it that, had no visible walls or ceiling. Instead, darkness pressed in from all sides, held at bay by a sickly green phosphorescence that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere. The air felt thick, almost gelatinous, and carried a sweet, rotting smell like dead flowers. "Hello?" His voice fell flat, as if the darkness itself was swallowing the sound. Something moved in his peripheral vision. A flash of yellow, like a piece of playground equipment, but when he turned his head, it was gone. His police training screamed at him to find his weapon, but his instincts told him it wouldn't matter here. Whatever had taken those kids, whatever this place was, it didn't play by earthly rules. A child's shoe lay on the ground nearby, red canvas, small, maybe belonging to Sofina Martinez. Cole picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The sole was pristine, as if it had never touched the ground. "They're not dead, if that's what you're wondering." Cole spun around. A figure stood in the darkness. Tall, impossibly thin, wearing what looked like a maintenance worker's uniform. But where its face could have been, there were only smooth, featureless skin. "What the hell are you?" Cole's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at his gut. "I'm the janitor." The voice came from everywhere. "I keep the spaces between spaces clean and tidy. At least I used to, before they started making such a mess." "They?" "The collectors. They found the gaps in reality, places where the walls are thin, playgrounds, especially slides. Something about the spiral motion, the moment of weightlessness, the trust required to let yourself fall." The janitor's uniform rippled, as if in a breeze that wasn't there. "They use these spaces to gather the children. Pure imagination, untrained by adult cynicism. They feed on it." Cole's hand instinctively reached for his missing gun. "Where are the kids?" "Further in. The collectors keep them in bubbles of frozen time. To them, it's only been moments since they went down those slides. But they can't stay there forever. Eventually, the collectors will consume them completely." "How do I stop them?" The janitor's featureless face turned toward him. "You don't, but I can help you save the children. For a price." "What price?" "Your cynicism, your doubt, the very things that make you an adult. The collectors aren't interested in grown-ups because we've lost our ability to truly imagine, to believe in impossible things. Give up your disbelief, Detective Cole, and I could show you how to reach them. Cole thought of Sophia, his Sophia, and how she'd always teased him about being too serious, too grounded, and maybe she'd been right all along. "Show me," he said. The janitor extended a hand that seemed long, fingers like pale spider legs. "Then let's begin. But remember, once you choose to believe in the monsters, you can never go back to thinking that they don't exist." Cole took the hand and the darkness swallowed them both. The janitor's grip was cold, like holding hands with marble. They moved through the darkness in ways that defied physics, stepping sideways through space, sliding between moments of time. Cole's mind struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. Corridors that folded in on themselves, stairways that led in all directions. "The collectors built these spaces," the janitor explained, its voice still coming from everywhere. "They fold reality like origami, creating pockets where they could store their collections." They passed through what seemed like a membrane, and Cole found himself in a vast chamber. Floating in the air were dozens of transparent spheres, each one containing a frozen moment in time. Inside each bubble, a child hung suspended, some mid-laugh, some crying, all perfectly preserved. "Jesus," Cole whispered. He spotted Tommy Davis in one of the nearest bubbles, his face frozen in an expression of surprise. "Are they conscious?" "In a way, they dream. The collectors feed on those dreams, on their imagination and wonder. Adult minds are too rigid, too fixed in their understanding of reality. But children, their minds are elastic and full of possibilities." Cole approached Tommy's bubble. The boy's skin had a faint pearlescent sheen to it, like he was being slowly transformed into something else. "The William twins," Cole said. "Where are they?" The janitor's featureless face turned toward a far corner of the chamber. "Almost too late for them. The collectors have nearly finished feeding." In the distance, Cole could see two spheres, their surfaces clouded and dark. Inside, the twins were barely visible, their forms becoming translucent, fading like old photographs. "How the hell do we free them?" "We don't. You do." The janitor's uniform rippled again. "Remember the price. Your disbelief. This is where you pay it. To break their bubbles, you must truly believe in impossible things, not just accept them. Believe in them like a child does." Cole thought of Sophia again, not his dead lover this time, but himself at 8 years old, before the world had turned him cynical, when he still believed in magic and monsters and possibilities. "Bubbles are made of doubt," the janitor continued. "Adult doubt. The certainty that things must make sense, must follow the rules. Break that certainty in yourself, and you'll break their prison." Something moved in the darkness beyond the bubbles, something huge and angular, like playground equipment come to life. The collectors were coming. "You better hurry, detective," the janitor said. "They don't like trespassers in their collection." Cole closed his eyes, reached for that part of himself he'd buried inside decades ago, the part that still believed in Santa Claus and tooth fairies and monsters under the bed, the part that knew, with a child's certainty, that anything was possible. When he opened his eyes again, they were different. The world was different. He could see the threads of reality now, the places where it had been folded and twisted by the collectors, and he could see how to unfold it. He reached out and touched Tommy's bubble. Under his fingers, it felt like spun sugar in starlight. "I believe," he whispered. The bubble popped. The sound of the first bubble popping echoed throughout the chamber like breaking glass, but softer like wind chimes shattering. Tommy Davis fell into Cole's arms, his skin cold but alive. The boy's eyes fluttered open, confused but aware. "Hello?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. "I was in the slide." A deep rumble shook the chamber. The darkness beyond the bubbles writhed, and Cole caught glimpses of what lurked there. Massive forms built from twisted metal and shadows. Playground equipment warped into monstrous shapes. The collectors were coming. "Your belief is weak," a voice thundered, like rusted chains dragging across concrete. "You cannot save them all." Cole held Tommy closer, feeling the boy tremble. "Watch me." He reached for Sofia Martinez's bubble next, letting his newfound belief flow through him. The membrane resisted at first, his adult mind trying to rationalize, to make sense of it all. Cole pushed past that, remembering what it felt like to be young, to know that magic was real, simply because it had to be. The burst bubble with a sound like laughter. Sophia fell forward, caught by Tommy. Her eyes were clearer than his had been. "I knew someone would come," she said. "I never stopped believing they would." The chamber shuddered again. Cracks appeared in the darkness, leaking pale light from somewhere else, somewhere real. The first collector emerged into view, and Cole finally understood why the janitor had no face. Compared to these things, its featureless countenance was almost normal. The collector was a cathedral of corrupted childhood. Slide tunnels twisted into rib cages, swing chains forming sinewed limbs, monkey bars melted and reformed into clawing hands. Where its head should have been, there was only an absence, a void that pulled at Cole's sanity. "The children are ours," it spoke, its voice the sound of every playground nightmare given a voice. "Their dreams sustain us. Their wonder feeds us." Cole pushed the kids behind him. "They were never yours to take." He turned to William's twins' bubbles, darkened but not yet completely corrupted. This would be harder. Their transformation had progressed further. The collector's influence deeper. But Cole had something now that he'd lost the day that Sophia died. Hope. He pressed his hands against both bubbles simultaneously, letting himself believe completely in happy endings, in justice, in the power of faith over fear. The bubbles resisted, but then slowly shattered. The twins collapsed into each other's arms, weak but alive. Their skin still held a metallic sheen, but it was fading with each real breath that they took. "No more," Cole faced the collectors. "No more stolen children. No more feeding on innocence. You cannot stop us." Another collector emerged, this one built from carousel horses and teeter-totters twisted into strange angles. "We are eternal. We are..." "You are nothing." The janitor's voice cut through the chamber. "Without their dreams to sustain you, you are less than nothing." Cole understood suddenly. The collectors needed the children's belief, their pure imagination to maintain their hold on reality. And without it, well... He turned to the remaining bubbles, dozens of them, containing children he didn't even know were missing. Each one a life stolen, a dream interrupted. With each burst bubble, the chamber grew brighter, reality bleeding back and through the cracks. The collectors screamed, a sound like every playground injury, every childhood fear every dark thought that ever crossed the young mind. They began to collapse in on themselves, their twisted forms unraveling. "Time to go home," Cole said to the gathered children. He looked to the janitor. "All of us." The featureless being shook its head. "My place is here, Detective. Someone must maintain the boundaries, keep the spaces between spaces clean. You know, you've remembered how to believe. Don't forget again." Light flooded the chamber as reality reasserted itself. Cole gathered the children, 23 in all, and ran for the growing brightness. Behind them, the collector's realm collapsed, taking its monsters with it. The last thing Cole heard was the janitor's voice. "The price of wonder, Detective, is that you can never stop believing in it." Then they were falling upwards, towards home, towards life, towards a world that would never look quite the same again. They emerged from the yellow tube slide in a cascade of children, tumbling onto the playground mulch as the morning sun crested over Riverside Park. 23 children in total, some who had been missing for years, all of them blinking in the daylight like newborns. Cole came out last, his suit covered in plastic burn marks, his tie long gone. He watched as the slide's opening rippled once, like heat waves off of hot asphalt, then settled back into ordinary playground equipment. The first parent's scream came moments later. Tommy Davis's mother, who had refused to leave the park since her son's disappearance. Then more parents arrived, drawn by some inexplicable instinct, or maybe just dumb luck. The air filled with cries of joy, of disbelief, of reunion. Police car and ambulances soon followed, and Cole watched from the bench as paramedics checked the children, as detectives took statements, as reporters gathered at the park edges like vultures. He knew what would happen next. There would be questions, investigations, theories. The truth would be buried under paperwork and rational explanations. But the children would remember, and so would he. That evening, Cole returned to his apartment. The whiskey bottles were still there, gathering dust on the windowsill. He picked one up, studying his reflection in the glass. His eyes were different now, younger, despite everything. Or maybe just less blind. He opened his desk drawer and took out Sophia's photo, his Sophia, from the academy. For the first time in 8 years, he really looked at it, at her smile, at the wonder in her eyes that he'd forgotten she'd had. "You were right," he told the photo, "about believing. You're right about everything." He tucked the picture into his wallet instead of putting it back into the drawer. Then he went to his window and one by one poured the whiskey bottles down the drain. Outside in parks across the city, children were playing on slides and swings as the sun set. Their laughter carried on the evening breeze. To most adults, it was just noise, the soundtrack of childhood. But Cole knew better now. He heard the magic in it, the pure belief that made the collectors so hungry. And he understood his new role, not just as a detective, but as a guardian of that wonder. And sometimes, on quiet nights, he thought he could hear the janitor at work, keeping the spaces between spaces clean. And sometimes when he walked through playgrounds on his beat, he would catch children looking at him with knowing eyes. The ones who remembered, the ones that he'd saved. They never spoke of it. They didn't need to. Some stories are best left in that space between reality and imagination, where belief makes anything possible. Cole kept his badge, he kept working cases, but he paid special attention to missing children reports, especially ones involving playgrounds. And if sometimes he had to believe in impossible things to solve them, well, that was the price of wonder. And he was finally ready to pay it.